Hello and welcome again to this second episode of Lockdown Notes from Sydney, where we are in lockdown for the foreseeable future. I'm not sure how long, but I would suggest, based on what we know at the moment, probably at least 2 to 4 more weeks. So I'm doing this little series as a way of sort of bringing my thoughts together on some of the big issues of the day. I'll try not to focus on the most obvious issues of the day, but I may not be able to resist from time to time. Today I'd like to talk about the vaccine, and I have had my AstraZeneca vaccination. I've had one. I'm due for another one. Well, I was originally due for it at the end of August, but seems that I'm now able to have my second AstraZeneca vaccination very soon, and I'm completely comfortable about this. Anyone who's had any serious medical interventions in the past, and I've had quite a few, would know that the kinds of odds of having most medical interventions are far, far, far worse than those that you face when you take the AstraZeneca vaccine. So I haven't really been very moved by all the scandals around AstraZeneca, but I do accept the idea that Pfizer is most likely a better option, simply because I think it's the data would tell you that it's more effective. So I buy that, but I don't buy into the hysteria around AstraZeneca, and I kind of feel like the media has probably given undue attention to this story, and it's put everybody in a difficult position, and it's been bungled as well by government, the sort of changes. But I think it's mainly been overblown by the media. On the whole vaccine question, I would also like to say I was so impressed by the way my vaccination was handled. My GP is not doing COVID vaccination, so I had to just basically find a random GP in my area, and I did. I booked an appointment and I went in there, and I cannot speak highly enough of the quality of care and professionalism I experienced from the GP here, who I'd never seen in my life. She was superb. Spent a lot of time making sure I understood what was happening, and it was just so impressive. And the idea that we have that kind of professionalism at our fingertips for the vaccine is really impressive. So I'm very grateful to that doctor, and very grateful to the system that availed me of the AZ vaccine. But today I wanted to touch on a couple of other vaccine points. I wanted to talk about the German Turkish vaccine, or the German Turkish immigrant vaccine. You may not have heard of the German Turkish immigrant vaccine, or most likely you have heard of it under another name. You probably know it as the Pfizer vaccine, or you may know it as the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. And the reason I want to talk about that is because it is one, there are lots of pretty juicy stories that have come out of COVID, and the story of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine that I have chosen to call the German Turkish immigrant vaccine is an absolutely exquisite story. And the reason I call it the German Turkish immigrant vaccine is because it was developed by German Turkish immigrants, who are the founders of the BioNTech company that actually developed what we now know as the Pfizer vaccine. This mRNA vaccine was developed, and the whole mRNA technology has been in development in Germany for several years. And it just is such a beautiful story. It's beautiful because it's a small company, it's not a big pharma, it's not Pfizer, for example, or a company like Pfizer. This incredible vaccine that is kind of transformational, really, was developed by a couple that run what is a relatively small, I mean, when I say relatively small, I think it's still worth well over $1 billion and has 1,000 employees. But in the world of big pharma, BioNTech is a relatively small player, and they developed this vaccine. They had to bring Pfizer in because of the likely scale requirements of this of the vaccine. So Pfizer, I think, were essential in the testing at scale and the distribution at scale. But we can thank this German Turkish couple for the Pfizer vaccine, which is just delicious. And so I love the fact that it's a small company that founded this, and in a way it strikes me as a bit of a story of how the real economy works. Small companies create the beautiful things, and big companies just come in over the top, take the credit and steal the ideas. I mean, I shouldn't say, I'm not suggesting Pfizer stole the ideas. It is a partnership between a massive corporation and a much, much smaller one. But that is a beautiful part of the story. I also love the fact that this vaccine was developed in Germany and not in the US, where Donald Trump had his Operation Warp Speed scheme that I believe was not involved in the development of this Pfizer vaccine. I think it was the Moderna vaccine is the product, in part at least, of that scheme. But Donald Trump, despite his claims, cannot take any credit, as far as I'm aware, for the Pfizer vaccine. And I love the fact that being in Germany, of course, being the country that Donald Trump was especially irritated by because of its whole system, and so the idea that Germany saves the world on this occasion is pretty sweet. And of course the fact that they are Turkish immigrants, the people who've saved the world. It's just, you couldn't actually compose this as a story. It's just spectacular. So, and here in Australia, I've not heard that much attention given to this fact. It seems to get pretty good coverage internationally, and if you search online, you'll find lots written about this couple. There's a really good podcast, New York Times podcast, where they're interviewed as well. And these are really impressive, interesting people, and it's just such a wonderful story. So if you're feeling a bit gloomy about the whole world of COVID today, have a listen to, I think her name's Kara Switzer, or Swisher. I think it's called Sway. It's a New York Times podcast anyway, but it's really cool. And there's lots of stuff written about this couple, and there's quite a lot of interesting stuff written about mRNA vaccines as well, and they sound like they're going to change lots of things in our lives in the future. But I also have to make some reference to the fact that Pfizer has been in the press here in Australia because, well, for a whole bunch of reasons. The main reason is because we just didn't order enough Pfizer vaccines, and we threw our lot in with AstraZeneca and with the Queensland vaccine, university vaccine, that fell over. Now that was bad luck, but we didn't spread our risk enough. All other developed countries put their lot, or most other developed countries, as far as I'm aware, basically threw their lot in with all the sort of emerging options when they had the opportunity to. We didn't do that, and that's why we've ended up in this situation. And not only that, we also, when we even did get around to ordering, we didn't order enough. And the idea that Kevin Rudd had to call the CEO of Pfizer because ScoMo hadn't done so is, well, is remarkable. But the last thing I wanted to sort of talk about is that it is a bit scary that we live in a world where prime ministers need to talk to the CEOs of drug companies. I regret that, and in a way the fact that this, I regret that means that these companies have such extraordinary power. So that's a sort of another element to this story that probably hasn't had that much attention. But if indeed it is really important that presidents and prime ministers speak with CEOs of companies like Pfizer, that might be a bit troubling. But anyway, thank you. I think my time is up again today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you're doing okay wherever you are, and we will talk again very soon. See ya.